Imagine standing directly in front of the most horrific industrialized machinery of death in human history. I mean, you are looking right at it.
Yeah, right at the barbed wire, the smokestacks.
Exactly. The thousands of emaciated people. But instead of terror, your very first thought is that you're looking at a farm with, like, a pretty severe plumbing problem.
Right, which is just wild to even think about.
You literally wonder out loud why these people don't just take a hot bath. And it sounds impossible, right? But that staggering disconnect between what is happening and what is understood is exactly what we are exploring today.
It really is the core of the whole thing.
So, welcome to another deep dive here on the Bibliophile channel. We are so incredibly glad you decided to spend some time with us today.
Absolutely. We've got a really intense one for you.
We do. And before we really get rolling into today's analysis, please take a quick second to like this video, drop a comment with your thoughts or ideas down below, and subscribe to the channel so you absolutely do not miss our next deep dive.
Yeah, it really does help us out, and we genuinely love seeing your perspectives in the comments.
We really do. We've got a lot of amazing literature to explore together, and we want you right here with us. So usually when we look at major historical events, especially, the darkest chapters like the Holocaust, we expect a wide-angle lens.
Right, we want the sweeping macro view.
Exactly. We want the dates, the massive political movements, because that helps us organize the tragedy in our minds. But today, we are taking the exact opposite approach.
We are zooming way, way in.
We are taking a thorough exploration into John Boyne's 2006 novel, The Boy in the Striped Pyjamas. And right on the title page, Boyne explicitly subtitles this book a fable.
Which, completely shifts the ground beneath our feet as readers.
Oh, for sure.
Looking at our sources, the critical reception really keys into that specific tension. Like, The Guardian called it a small wonder of a book.
I love that description.
Me too. And The Observer made a really profound point. They noted that the Holocaust usually insists on silence and almost a paralyzing respect. But they wrote that this book will not go gently into any good night.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a narrative that insists on being heard, but it forces us to look at the Holocaust through this highly restricted, incredibly innocent perspective.
So our mission for this deep dive is to unpack exactly how Boyne pulls this off. We're going to break down how he uses the extreme, almost frustrating innocence of a 9-year-old boy to frame the machinery of a death camp.
Extracting the essential details from beginning to end.
Right, from its start in a really privileged Berlin home, all the way to its genuinely chilling end. So let's start with that disruption of innocence.
Yeah, let's get into it.
We meet 9-year-old Bruno. He comes home from school one afternoon to find the family maid, Maria, just pulling all his belongings out of the wardrobe and packing them into these large wooden crates.
And, Bruno's immediate reaction isn't fear or questioning the geopolitical state of 1940s Germany.
Obviously not, he's 9.
Right. It's just pure self-centered indignation. I mean, he thinks he's being punished. He's racking his brain, trying to remember if he caused any chaos recently to deserve this.
It's all about him.
Exactly. To him, the world is entirely centered around his own childhood experiences.
And his biggest concerns are so beautifully and tragically mundane. Like, he is absolutely devastated to be leaving his 5-story home in Berlin.
And his favorite banister.
Yes, he's heartbroken about leaving his banister. He has this whole routine where he slides down from the top floor all the way to the bottom.
It's such a perfectly specific kid detail.
It is. That, and he has to leave his 3 best friends for life, Carl, Daniel, and Martin.
It's a brilliant depiction of childhood egocentrism. The brain of a 9-year-old simply cannot process macroscopic tragedy, so it just anchors to microscopic inconveniences.
So true.
So the whole reason their lives are getting upended is because of his father's job. Mother explains that someone very important has given father a very special assignment. And Bruno recalls a recent dinner party where this important man came to their house, but Bruno mishears the man's title. Instead of the Führer, Bruno calls him the Fury.
Okay, wait, I actually have to jump in here because I remember reading this and thinking, doesn't that stretch believability just a bit?
How so?
Well, I mean, a German boy living in a high-ranking Nazi household wouldn't know the word Führer. Like, he wouldn't know the name of the most famous man in his country.
It's a great question, and it's exactly where we have to remember that subtitle we talked about, a fable.
Oh, right, the fable structure.
Yeah, a fable bypasses our adult intellectual defenses.
Yeah.
If Boyne wrote a stark, historically accurate account of a Hitler youth in training, our brains would immediately put up a shield of historical distance.
Maybe like, that was then, this is now.
Exactly. By calling it a fable and having Bruno mispronounce the Führer as the Fury, Boyne is stripping away our adult historical lexicon. He forces you, the listener, to actively decode the horror happening just off the page.
It's almost like looking at a solar eclipse, right?
Oh, I like that analogy.
Yeah, if you look directly at the Holocaust, it blinds you. It's too vast, too horrifying to comprehend all at once. So Boyne forces us to look through this pinhole camera of Bruno's innocence.
Right, the pinhole camera.
And paradoxically, that restricted view makes the edges of the horror much, much sharper.
It really does.
Yeah.
Because we know who came to dinner. We know what Father's new job actually entails. The reality feels even more menacing precisely because the narrator doesn't understand the danger.
Yeah. To Bruno, the monster isn't a historical figure.
No, he's just an arrogant dinner guest who rudely sat in Father's favorite chair.
Which is just crazy to think about. So that willful blindness from the adults forces Bruno into his new reality, which is a reality he completely misinterprets.
So let's look at the view from the window of their new house.
Yes. They arrive, and Bruno is appalled. It's desolate, it's isolated, it's cold. His 12-year-old sister Gretel, whom Bruno affectionately refers to as a hopeless case, by the way.
Which is such a sibling thing to do.
Right. Well, she tells him the name of the new place. She says it's called Out With.
And again, the pinhole camera's at work here. She's mispronouncing Auschwitz.
But what really shatters their understanding of the world is what they see when they look out of Bruno's bedroom window.
The fence.
Yeah. About 20 feet past a lovely little garden, there is this massive wire fence. It's higher than the house itself, extending endlessly in both directions, held up by huge wooden posts with enormous bales of barbed wire tangled at the top.
And beyond that fence, there are low huts, square buildings, 2 smokestacks.
And thousands of people.
Yeah, small boys, fathers, grandfathers, all wearing identical gray striped pajamas and gray striped caps.
And here is where we get that profound disconnect you mentioned at the start. Gretel, trying to play the older, wiser sister, attempts to rationalize the nightmare they are looking at.
Right, she suggests it must be the countryside. It's a farm.
But her own logic defeats her. If it's a farm, where are the cows, the pigs, the horses? Why is the ground just sand like dirt?
And then she notices how dirty everyone looks. The dark irony of their conversation is staggering. They genuinely wonder out loud if the people are dirty because they don't have hot water.
Or baths.
Yeah. The mundane childhood logic they use to try and make sense of this scene highlights the absolute absurdity of the camp's existence better than any history book could.
They literally think a death camp is just a neighborhood with a plumbing issue.
It forces you to realize how completely unnatural this industrialized murder is. By placing something so monstrous next to the innocence of a child's bedroom, the contrast is just blinding.
It really is.
And speaking of contrasts, Boyne juxtaposes this horror with Gretel's main hobby. She spends all her time arranging her massive collection of dolls.
Which is such a brilliant, chilling detail. But why does Boyne put so much emphasis on a teenage girl's doll collection while people are being mechanized and murdered just outside her window?
Because it's fundamentally about control and dehumanization. Inside the house, Gretel meticulously controls her inanimate dolls, placing them exactly where she wants them.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and outside the window, her fathers are doing the exact same thing to human beings, treating them as faceless, interchangeable objects.
That is deeply unsettling. And it brings us perfectly to the adults in the room. Because while the children are failing to grasp the situation, we really have to look at the complicity of the adults who built this fallacy.
The ones running the machine.
Right. You have father, who is distant and authoritative. His office is explicitly out of bounds at all times and no exceptions.
And then you have Lieutenant Kotler.
Oh, Kotler.
Yeah, a young, very blonde, very arrogant soldier who flirts with 12-year-old Gretel, calls Bruno little man, and exhibits these terrifying sudden flashes of extreme cruelty toward the prisoners working in the house.
Which brings us to Pavel. Pavel wears the striped pajamas but comes into the house to peel potatoes and serve dinner.
And there's this incredibly moving scene with him.
Yeah, Bruno builds a tire swing, falls off, and cuts his knee to the bone. Pavel immediately drops what he's doing, carries Bruno inside, and expertly cleans and bandages the wound.
And that's when he reveals to Bruno that before he came to Out With, he was actually a doctor.
And the most telling part of that scene is Mother's reaction, isn't it?
Definitely. She comes home, sees what happened, and looks absolutely terrified. She tells Pavel that if the commandant, meaning father, asks, they will say that she cleaned the wound.
Bruno thinks she's just stealing credit for the bandaging.
Right. but we know she is desperately trying to protect Pavel from being murdered for daring to touch an Aryan child.
Let me ask you this, though. Sometimes when I read these adult interactions, it feels almost staged. You have this stern Nazi father, the cruel young lieutenant, the nervous mother.
Feels a bit like archetypes.
Yeah, exactly. Why does Boyne rely on these specific archetypes? Doesn't it risk feeling like cardboard cutouts?
That's a very fair critique of the fable genre, for sure. But Boyne's doing this deliberately to show the entire spectrum of complicity. He isn't trying to write complex, nuanced psychological profiles of every single Nazi.
Okay, that makes sense.
He is mapping out the anatomy of willful ignorance. Pavel is there to puncture the lie of Jewish inferiority. The regime wants Bruno to see Pavel as a subhuman potato peeler, but Boyne reveals him as a highly skilled, compassionate doctor.
And then there's the grandmother.
Yes, the most important adult in the book. The one who completely shatters the illusion that everyone was just following orders.
Oh, that Christmas party flashback. I mean, put yourself in her shoes for a second. You are at a family Christmas party back in Berlin. Your son comes walking down the stairs in his brand new, highly decorated commandant uniform.
And your husband is just glowing with pride.
Right. What do you do in that moment?
Grandmother is thoroughly disgusted. She looks at her son and calls him a puppet on a string.
Wow.
She cries out right in front of the entire family and all the party guests that they're helping the great wrongs. She is the one adult who absolutely refuses to play along with the pageantry.
She basically represents the buried conscience of the German people. She proves that the adults do know exactly what is going on. They aren't confused like Bruno.
No, they are making a conscious choice to be complicit.
It proves that refusal was always an option, even if it alienated you from your own family.
Exactly. And that adult complicity, that refusal to explain the truth to Bruno, creates a psychological isolation that physically manifests in his actions.
Because he's so alone.
Right. Feeling totally alone in this house with a tutor Herr List who only wants to teach him Nazi propaganda, Bruno decides to do what he loved doing in Berlin. He goes exploring.
He walks along the fence line. He walks for a long, long time until he sees a dot that becomes a speck, that becomes a blob, that becomes a figure, that becomes a boy.
And this leads us to the mirror image of the novel. Bruno meets Shmuel.
Shmuel is sitting cross-legged in the dirt on the other side of the fence, wearing the striped pajamas and an armband with the Star of David.
And they discover this profound, almost cosmic connection.
They share the exact same birthday.
April 15th, 1934. They are both exactly 9 years old today.
They are literal mirror images. Two boys, the exact same age, living side by side, but separated by a wire fence that dictates entirely different realities.
And Shmuel starts telling Bruno his story. And it is just a harrowing account.
Yeah, he talks about his mother, who was a teacher and spoke multiple languages. He talks about being forced to wear the armband.
Which Bruno hilariously and tragically compares to the swastika his father wears.
Right. And then Schmiel describes being moved to a cramped single room in Krakow and eventually the horrific, suffocating train ride where the doors were locked and people couldn't breathe.
And here's where the friction of the novel really peaks.
Yeah.
Because Bruno consistently misunderstands Shmuel's trauma.
He really does.
When Shmuel talks about the agonizing train ride, Bruno complains about his own train ride from Berlin. He complains that he had to leave his 3 friends and that his carriage had doors that wouldn't shut properly, letting a draft in.
Okay, I have to be honest here. This is the part of the deep dive where I was practically yelling at the book.
It's hard to read.
It is. Isn't Bruno almost too oblivious here? I mean, I know he's 9, but his total inability to pick up on Shmuel's blatant suffering feels incredibly frustrating as a reader.
It absolutely is frustrating, but I'd argue that frustration is a feature, not a bug. It is the engine of the narrative. Bruno's extreme innocence isn't meant to be perfectly psychologically realistic for a German boy of that era.
Then what is it?
It is a literary device to generate intense, dramatic irony.
How so?
Boyne is using Bruno's misunderstanding to force you to fill in the horrifying blanks. When Bruno complains about a train with too much fresh air, your brain immediately flashes to the reality of the suffocating cattle cars Shmuel was trapped in.
Ah, I see.
Boyne doesn't have to describe the horrors of the camp in graphic detail. By having Bruno misunderstand them, the emotional impact lands much heavier on us.
Because we are doing the terrible translation in our own heads, it makes us active participants in the horror rather than just passive observers.
Precisely. And this willful ignorance, this well-intentioned but dangerous curiosity, ultimately leads to the story's tragic climax.
Let's talk about that climax, because the tension just ratchets up unbearably.
It really does. Mother is deteriorating mentally. It's finally decided that she will take Bruno and Gretel back to Berlin.
But right before they are scheduled to leave, Schmiel comes to the fence with devastating news. His father has gone missing in the camp. He went on a work detail and never came back.
And Bruno, wanting to help his friend and wanting one final adventure before he leaves out with, makes a promise. He tells Schmiel he will come over to his side of the fence to help search for his father.
So Schmiel brings Bruno an extra pair of unwashed striped pajamas.
And this next part is just so tense.
Yeah, Bruno takes off his own clothes, leaves them in a pile in the mud on his side of the fence, puts on the pajamas, and crawls underneath a loose section of the wire. And the moment he stands up on the other side, the illusion completely shatters.
The pinhole camera opens up. Bruno is shocked by the reality of the camp. It is nothing like his innocent imagination.
No cafes, no fruit stalls.
Right? No people sitting on rocking chairs on porches. There are just terribly skinny, deeply sad people and shouting soldiers everywhere.
Then the weather turns. It starts raining heavily. The mud is everywhere. Suddenly, the soldiers blow whistles and start violently herding a large group of prisoners together.
And Bruno and Schmuel are caught right in the middle of the crowd.
They are marched into a long, warm, very dark room.
And even now, Bruno's innocence persists. He assumes they are just being moved inside to keep them out of the rain.
In the pitch darkness and the rising panic of the adults around them, as the heavy doors are locked from the outside, Bruno reaches out and finds Schmuel's hand.
He holds onto it tightly and tells him, "You're my best friend, Schmuel. My best friend for life."
And the narrative simply tells us that they are never heard from again. It's a breathtaking gut punch.
It is. But the story doesn't end there. It shifts to the aftermath. Mother waits frantically for Bruno. Gretel cries over her maps.
Eventually, they give up and return to Berlin, holding on to this desperate hope that he somehow made his way back there on his own.
And it takes a full year. A year later, Father is still running out with, and he finally pieces the puzzle together.
He goes to the exact spot along the fence where they found Bruno's pile of clothes. He notices the gap at the base of the wire.
He realizes that a small boy could easily lift it and crawl underneath.
He looks into the distance, traces the logical path from that gap to the center of the camp, and he collapses. His legs completely give out.
The book notes that eventually other soldiers come to Outwith to relieve Father of his command and take him away.
And he just goes with them.
Yeah, without complaint.
Yeah.
Because his spirit is utterly broken. He doesn't really mind what they do to him anymore.
The devastating finality of Father's discovery is the ultimate horrific irony. The architect of the camp, the man who meticulously runs the machinery of death day in and day out, loses his own son to his own machine.
If we pull back and look at the broader mechanics of this fable, Boyne is illustrating a profound reality about systems of hatred.
What's that?
They cannot be cleanly contained. If you build a machine designed to consume human life, it will inevitably consume the innocent alongside the intended target.
That makes total sense.
The fence Father guarded so closely, the boundary he thought separated his privileged life from the horrors he created, was completely permeable.
Hatred doesn't stay on its own side of the wire.
Exactly.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive, we've looked at how The Boy in the Striped Pajamas uses a child's deeply flawed, naive perspective to bypass our historical defenses.
It strips away the complex geopolitical timeline.
And it leaves us with two 9-year-old boys sitting on opposite sides of a wire fence, forcing us to examine complicity and the deadly consequences of prejudice.
But the author leaves us with one final, incredibly sharp barb.
Yes, the ending. I want to leave you, the listener, with a final thought to mull over based on the very last lines of the book.
It's quite a shift in tone.
It is. After describing Father being taken away, the narrator steps back, breaks the fable structure entirely, and states to the reader, "Of course, all this happened a long time ago, and nothing like that could ever happen again. Not in this day and age."
It is a brilliantly chilling piece of sarcasm to end on.
It really is. I want you to truly ponder that blatantly false assurance. By ending with the sarcastic promise that nothing like that could ever happen again, Boyne is holding up a mirror to us.
Asking us to look at ourselves.
Right. What fences in our modern world are we currently ignoring? Are we standing by watching dehumanization happen in our own day and age, as oblivious as Bruno, or worse, as complicit as his father?
A difficult, uncomfortable question, but one the book absolutely demands we ask ourselves.
Thank you so much for tuning into the Bibliophile channel for this deep dive. If this conversation gave you something to think about, please do hit that like button, share your thoughts and your answers to that final question in the comments, and subscribe so we can keep exploring incredible literature together. Until next time, keep reading and keep questioning.